The U.S. and Israeli air forces will soon have complete control of Iranian skies. That update coming straight from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth as the U.S. and Israel ramp up their strikes across the region.
Starting last night and to be completed in a few days, in under a week, the two most powerful air forces in the world will have complete control of Iranian skies, uncontested airspace. I hope all the folks watching understand what uncontested airspace and complete control means. It means we will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military, finding and fixing their leaders and their military leaders, flying over Tehran, flying over Iran, flying over their capital, flying over the IRGC, Iranian leaders looking up and seeing only U.S. and Israeli air power every minute of every day until we decide it's over. And Iran will be able to do nothing about it.
Here's where things stand right now. Israel is said to launch new strikes in Tehran and Lebanon today. Plus, a U.S.-based organization says more than 1,000 civilians in the country have died, including more than 180 children. And a three-day funeral service for Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is now postponed. Then there's this. The names of 4 out of 6 U.S. service members who died during an Iranian strike have now been released. You can see them here on your screen, and we are still waiting to learn the names of the remaining 2. CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor was in the room for Secretary Hegseth's remarks, and she joins us live right now. So, Ellie, what else stood out to you in this latest update from Secretary Hegseth and General Kane?
The thing that most stood out to me was that Secretary Hegseth said, "We're just getting started," saying that the U.S. could easily sustain this fight for as long as it takes. He said that could mean 4 weeks, it could mean 8 weeks, it could mean 3 weeks. Another piece that stood out to me was when asked why now, essentially why now, Hegseth responded that he would separate the what with the when a little bit, saying what determined when the U.S. struck was more, according to him, when did it make the most sense to go after the ballistic missile capabilities Iran has so they don't have the defensive cover to build a nuclear weapon if they decide to. Now, while he made clear the U.S. is ramping up, General Kane, who was alongside him, indicated Iran's capabilities may be slowing down. He laid out some percentages that since the fighting began, Iran's ballistic missile shots are down 86%, with a 23% decrease in just the last 24 hours. And one-way attack drones down 73% from opening days. But they're still kind of firing these projectiles indiscriminately, which is why the State Department is urging Americans to leave 14 countries days after the conflict started.
And Ellie, we are learning more about what's happening inside Iran. There are reports that an Israeli F-35 jet shot down an Iranian manned fighter aircraft. How significant is that?
Yeah, Mugo, we've learned from the Israeli Defense Forces, who put out a tweet that says an Israeli F-35 shot down an Iranian fighter jet. It's kind of to be expected that an experienced Israeli fighter pilot could shoot down such a jet, which is at least a generation behind the F-35 and is subsonic instead of supersonic. But it does go to the point you played earlier from Secretary Hegseth that the U.S. and Israel are working to have air superiority over Iran within the week. And that would allow both the U.S. and Israel to drop munitions while flying over Iran instead of firing them from outside of the country. Another significant strike we learned about this morning was in the Indian Ocean, where Secretary Hegseth said a U.S. submarine for the first time since 1945 sunk an enemy ship. That submarine, there are reports that there are as many as 87 bodies that have been recovered from that Iranian ship. In total, the U.S. has sunk 20 Iranian Navy ships and effectively, according to Chairman Kane, neutralized the Iranian Navy's presence in the Strait of Hormuz, which is a significant commercial waterway, especially for oil, that the U.S. would like to see not threatened.
Okay. Eleanor Watson, thank you so much. Let's turn now to the White House with CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand. Natalie, there's still questions surrounding the justification for this war. What are we hearing from the Trump administration about that?
Hi, Mugo. Yeah, we've heard some slightly different and evolving explanations, but over the past 24 hours, it seems like administration officials and Secretary Hegseth this morning, really trying to emphasize that the administration feels like Iran was negotiating in bad faith. Hegseth said that they were stalling, scheming, and preparing to strike. That kind of echoes what President Trump said yesterday as well, about 24 hours ago. Hegseth was also asked specifically what evidence did the administration have, particularly since last year's operation in June targeted those key nuclear sites in Iran. And he said that the evidence was that Iran had no intention of actually negotiating a nuclear deal that truly meant they did not have a pathway to a nuclear bomb. Now, this messaging is a bit different than what we heard from Secretary Rubio earlier in the week when he said, told reporters that there was information that Israel was going to strike Iran and that retaliation by Iran could then put U.S. troops and assets in harm's way. Since then, Rubio has tried to kind of clean up some of his comments. He was asked by reporters yesterday to clarify, and essentially he said that, once the decision was made by President Trump that Iran was not going to negotiate, that the threat was untenable, that was the decision to strike. So we're going to have to continue to track this, but we do know from CBS News polling that the majority of Americans are not satisfied. They do not feel like the administration has clearly articulated its goals in this conflict.
Yeah, Natalie, you just talked about that poll that shows that the majority of Americans, they disapprove of this war. How do you think this might influence the Trump administration and the president himself?
Well, what's interesting is if you drill into the numbers, while the majority of Americans disapprove, if you look at the Republican and MAGA percentages, there's actually majority overwhelming support among Republicans. And that's kind of echoing what we are also seeing and hearing on Capitol Hill, where a large majority of Republican lawmakers who have talked about this have said they support the operation, even though, Democrats remain staunchly opposed. And if you look at our polling, independents are also disapproving.
Okay, Natalie Brand outside the White House for us today. Thank you so much.